Hello, so this is going to be an Arcadian Atlas review, or so should you buy the game? And my answer is no, and a reason for that is because for $30, you don't get a lot from the game. It's around like 9 to 10 hours, even with reading through the main story. So you don't, it's not as bulky in content as many other games that you'd get around $30. Like the writing is pretty well done, and the gameplay mechanics are pretty great, but there's just not much there. And even if it's like great, it's still like lacking compared to other options, other games that it's based off of. So we're gonna look at the gameplay mechanics stuff, right? Because that's what people want to know about. So the game is heavily inspired by Final Fantasy Tactics. So the battle system and the map system and everything, it's if you've played Final Fantasy Tactics, it'll be extremely similar. Even the item shop, the recruiters, and the tavern, like very simple things that's been brought over or copied or cloned and stuff. The main difference from this and Final Fantasy Tactics is that you can't really switch class, and once you're in a class or you get a character from a class, the main thing they can do is just promote to a different class from a branch. So if we look at Romancing right here, right? It's the mage class of the game, and you see it has a skill tree, so you can make them unique-ish to a degree. And then once you get to level 20 and use up 20 skill points, you could promote to either a shaman or a druid. And then in those classes, they have their own skill tree. Any unused skill points will be transferred over, but you can't go back and learn any skills in the Romancing tree if you promote it. And that's pretty much how it does for all the classes, compared to Final Fantasy Tactics, where you can switch classes pretty much at will as long as you meet the requirements. And yeah, the UI of this game is also pretty simple. Everything's right there. Everything's extremely accessible. From getting gear or recruiting people or just like accessing the menu to check your troops or like character information and tutorials, etc. It's not too innovative, and it seems to be more lacking in content than Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre and such, which it's based off of. And many other clones, it would be extremely lacking in comparison, and you'd probably want to play those games more. The systems for the game is actually, pretty well done for a small group of developers that made this. So if you go to the tavern, you'll see that there's a contracts option. This is where you get missions and stuff, right? Well, that's the only other option you have to get extra battles, because the battles in this game are extremely limited. If you look at the map, you'll notice that there's these yellow dots, right? So they're pretty much like field areas where you battle on, and not city spaces basically. But no matter how much you walk on them, you'll never encounter a random battle, or I've never encountered a random battle when I'm on them. And then the blue spaces are towns, cities where you can like shop and recruit and stuff. And red is where the next location's at. So it's, it's extremely simple. It doesn't have much, and after you fight a certain amount of time, that's it. You can't keep grinding endlessly. Level cap isn't really there, but it is there technically because you only fight so much. As long as your highest level character doesn't die, you could reach like max level 44, and that's pretty much where it stops. And the whole thing about that though is when you recruit, you don't start at level 1. You start at the highest level that you have, So right here it'll be any new character will be level 44. Oh, what's sucky though is you can't design or choose specifically which character you want. It has to be completely random. Stats don't change between them. It's just, you know, they choose the base stats and then the cumulative level and that's it. So you're pretty much stuck that way. But yeah, and it's command points. I'm sure here. It's for when you finish the missions, you get these points to spend on, right? And you can choose things like make things item shop stuff cheaper, or recruiting cheaper, renaming cheaper, early game equipment and money, which is needed, and respecing your main character so you can change their class to something else. All these except for the respect are pretty useless. Even the respect is pretty useless because you're not using the main characters. Because the main characters auto level in this game, so there's no need to ever use them because they'll be forced on certain main missions and that's it. And so you'll play them every now and then. But if you just use a team of randoms, right, you'll do fine. As long as they don't die, you know, the highest, because you can always recruit the highest level character. As long as you keep one character in all the battles, you can just get a fresh new team whenever, and you don't have to worry about it. Death isn't, you know, a big deal. You could let characters die freely nilly, or main characters can't die though. If they die and there's a 3-turn countdown and it hits 0, then it's game over. But that's why you just don't use them, and then the game becomes extremely easy because you don't have to worry about, you know, a game over as long as there's one character left. Especially if it's the highest level character, which all of them will probably be pretty much the same level always. Another issue is, if you notice how much money I have, it's 536,000, right? And that's an insanely high amount, and even if you fully gear a character, you still have a lot of money left. And let's show an example. This is the best stuff you can buy right now. And as you can see, it's only like 11,000, and you could gear 5 times, so it'd be like 55,000, and you still have an insane amount of money left over, which I already did. I spent it on pretty much 5 of my characters, or 6, 7 maybe? Yeah. So, and I still have an insane amount of money left over, and there's just nothing to spend it on. So all of that perk from the command points menu is again useless because you just have so much money. Yeah, I don't know what you're going to be doing with it. Is it unless your characters are dying non-stop like mad, and then you have to re-gear each time. I'm not even sure if the gear disappears or anything, but or if they die. But if it doesn't, then it's again, I don't know what the point of the money is. So that's really, really dumb. Let's see. The battle system is pretty cool. But let's see, am I done with this? Yep. Yeah, let's go to the battle system. So, but it's just Final Fantasy Tactics, but slightly expanded on, because it has more of a focus on weather, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And the main weather is just rain, and what happens when it rains? You get wet, and then that means electric damage just does more, and then fire does less, and I don't know what ice does, but it's something maybe. But that's just the main draw that's different from Final Fantasy Tactics. I can see here that UI is extremely simple. Select your characters and choose which way they're looking. It's a little bit better than Final Fantasy Tactics in my opinion because you actually get to place them on the actual map. And then, you see? So we're gonna look at the damage, right? So, how do I do? You're gonna attack Wolf right here. So we're gonna use... Look at all these skills, right? You'd think it'd be great to have a lot of skills, but a lot of them are pretty terrible. So, if you use rapid succession, you see I do 160 damage, that's like 50% of the opponent's health already. So, if you're taking enemies out in 1 or 2 hits, or 2 or 3 hits, there's no need to haste yourself at 80%, because it just makes it slightly sooner, but it's gonna reach that turn anyways, so it doesn't, you don't really need it. Dousing arrow is cool, it makes them fight and you can shoot electric, but then I could just use rapid succession twice, so I don't have to pair with electricity, even though it'd be pretty cool, I guess. Arrow rain, it's AoE, so it does have use because it's AoE, but then you eventually upgrade a dive bomber and it's, it's, a lot of the skills are useless, and this rapid succession, you get it as a first tier class skill, which is extremely strong, so and a lot of class gets it, all these types of skills, so the moment you start off the game, you already have like the best skills available to you, so it doesn't, the skill system really sucks, because the later skills aren't really worth it at all, they're extremely terrible, just weak compared to what you usually, what you already got. Because you know how much damage you're doing, the battles are extremely short. So it only takes a couple of minutes. And there's like a decent amount of battles, but since it's so short, that means the whole game's gonna be extremely short overall as well. And that just, yeah, so you don't really have much to do. It takes like a few turns. And even then, if it's a defeat boss chapter, then it's even shorter because you just rush the boss and then that's it. There are buffs like this, but it doesn't matter enough. You're pretty much gonna die in 1 or 2 hits or 3 hits, even if you get buffed. So there's no reason to buff or debuff. Like, if you look at the hit rates, right? 100%. Like, the hit rates are so high in this game. The blind status effects and evasion stuff don't do much. Like, I guess like at worst it'd be like 70%, but that's still extremely accurate, so it just doesn't matter. And it just makes the battle like extremely like, you know, simple, fast, and like boring. You don't, not much to like worry about. Like, there are cool status effects, but you're not really going to use them. Like, the best one's stun, right? And sleep, because it stops the character, so you probably do something else if you're not right, just kill them out. Like, there's stuff like absorption shield, which gives you like 30 extra HP, so you don't die. And there's haste, and then smarter, which is sacrifice yourself. This is a good skill, but then it's just like the only good attack skill that the healer has. But yeah, it's just extremely lacking, even though there's a lot of good ideas there. There's no need to actually use many of the skills because one is enough. You know, 1 or 2, like the AoE skill and then the 130% damage skill that pretty much all characters, all classes get. So yeah, it's a good idea, but it's not balanced well, so the classes are pretty terrible overall. Best one being Archer because they have an insane amount of range. That dive bomber skill is like a huge 3x3 AoE, so you could easily, you know, sweep enemies from across the map with just a team of archers and like 1 healer. Yeah, so gameplay is kind of boring. With mages, you have to cast, but that archer right there, that dive bomber skill is just instant cast, which is, you know, it means no need for mages, right? If they have the FST right next to it, fast or whatever, that means it's going to be cast just like that. Now look at the samurai, right? The Ronin. Like, yeah, battle trance makes so you do more damage, right? But it takes 1 turn. And his regular attack already does 1 siege, which takes them out, like half. It just takes out the guy. And the adrenaline rush, which is 200 damage. So you're doing like 50 to 60% of the HP with every action. So yeah, it's just, the numbers are just insane compared to like most other strategy games. And it makes the map go by so fast, you just barely play the game at all. That's why the game is so extremely short at like 9 hours. Oh yeah, that's for the battle system. The writing is pretty good. It's more girly, I'll say that. So if that's an issue, then it's, or if that's a boom, then power to you. What's good is there's a lot of information given. If you go into the tavern, you go to the chatter section, and then if you look, you'll notice like all these chatter, right? So it's just people talking or like reporting and such. It'll give you some background information on like what's going on, and gives you more some lore, so you can like ponder or question what's going on. And then there's the compendium, which will go more and explain into the characters and who they are and what, etc. I don't really read through this. There's a lot, and I kind of just don't care. Many, like aside from the main characters, and it's just these two, right, are kind of the main focus. So they're just there. These guys are just there. It is explained more on like demons and stuff, but if you're into lore, it's good for you. But if it's not, then it's just there. It's not gonna add on more hours, like unless you read extremely slow, then maybe. But I don't read that slow. But yeah, having a report is pretty cool. The story's pretty lighthearted, but it's also pretty dark too. It's kind of mix of both. But it's not super edgy, so it's pretty plain story, but it's acceptable and decent. It doesn't go out of its way to make itself edgy to look cool. It does have a flow pretty well-ish for the two main leads, but the other characters become like kind of lacking. You kind of wish there was more cutscenes to flesh out some romances or some more character background. It's just lacking. And yeah, there's not a lot of content there, although it's some pretty decent content. It's lacking in content. For $30 you would expect a lot more, but with a small development team, don't expect too much out of a game like this. I mean, some of the stuff are really well done, like the soundtrack, right? It's really beautiful, and then even the title screen music is pretty nice too. But then there's not it's not funded well, I'm assuming. So you don't get a lot. The first battle theme is pretty much repeated non-stop throughout the whole game. With every now and then it'll change, but you don't really notice it because the battle goes by so fast. But then you might get sick of it eventually. This map theme I kind of got tired of because it's extremely loud and it's just repeated all the time, and it's just yeah. But it's nice that it's like a more classical or like a jazz theme type music instead of like pop like other games. It does have a lot of elements that make it a good game, with the terrain effects and the skills comboing sometimes. What didn't show, well, there was the wet that effect like arrows and dousing, but that's pretty much it. Because there's no need to ever poison and other stuff, because damage number is just too high, so most of the skills become useless because you can just regular attack or just do the best damage you can, and then two hits it's done. That's just pretty much every skill. The only difficulty there is if you're using like a healer, but that's normal because they're healers, so they're not gonna do like the most damage. But then even then it's like 100 damage, so if the other guy does 200 damage, then it's 300 damage, and then it's it's 2 hits still. So yeah, it's just insanely bad number scaling, which kind of really does screw over the game, and it makes the maps really fast. And the AI isn't super genius, but they're okay. But they're gonna rush towards you, and then they're gonna take massive damage, especially with archers, and then it's just map done in like 1 or 2 minutes, or a little bit more, like 3. Yeah. So yeah, my ending thoughts is that I do not see this game doing extremely well, especially at $30. I feel like $10 or $15, I'd say it's worth the price to check it out. But with what we have at the moment, especially right after the Steam sales, I can't recommend this game to people. Maybe if it's on sale and you just want to enjoy it for the story, you can check it out if you're not gonna watch on YouTube. But yeah, it's just extremely lacking. But it is made by a small group though, and for what they've done, not to discourage them or anything, but they've done it pretty well just to replicate the Final Fantasy Tactics system, and then adding onto the elemental weather effects as well, and even the skill tree. But yeah, they just need to work better on the numbers for the game to actually make it, last longer. And then hopefully, if they were funded a bit more, maybe they'd probably do even better. But with what we have now, it's just not a game you'd want to play or recommend other people to play. It's actually, it's at least a good starting point for them, or a starting game, if this is their first game. And they can only improve on from here. There's a lot of good concepts in it. It did involve a lot of Final Fantasy Tactics concepts, so with a little more work, maybe more funding and stuff, they can add more. But yeah, it's just not an option to pick from when there's a lot of other clones or copycats out there that will do a lot better. Soundtrack is still good though, and writing is decent, but yeah, it's a no. Don't. With how expensive some games are at this moment, $30 for this is not worth it. And that's pretty much my review on it. I did beat the game on hard mode and everything, and it started off the first map right after you get units. It's hard, and then right after that it just becomes sweet because once you get skills, you just 3-minute combats, 3-minute maps, even with like missions and stuff. If you do missions, you're insanely over level. So unless you're letting people die like crazy and somehow switching people in like mad just to for some reason, and it just keeps your level low, then you screw yourself over, baby. But yeah, it's just not worth it. I think for me, I think some of the achievements were bugged, so I didn't get some achievements. But yeah, it's a good concept, but and it does play well, but it's just way too lacking. And so yeah, don't buy the game if you want something to play repeatedly or for a long time. If you have money though, I guess, if it's on sale, check it out. Probably aim for like $10 or less. Other than that, yeah, not a game I could recommend, especially if another game that just came out recently, like 2 days before this game launched, which I don't like that one too much either, but it has more sustenance in it than this. But yeah, that's pretty much it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed my first review for the game.